Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, not just to hear a story, but to become shadows moving along ancient desert paths. Imagine the dead of night. The only sounds are the crunch of your own sandals on gravel and the whisper of a hot wind carrying the scent of strange, foreign spices. You're on a mission deep in enemy territory, where a single mistake, a single misplaced footstep, could unravel the destiny of an entire people. And let's be honest, given the survival rates of ancient intelligence operatives, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to see where you're all tuning in from tonight, so please feel free to post your location and local time in the comments. It's always wonderful to see how far these stories travel. The camp is a universe unto itself, sprawling across the dusty floor of the barren wilderness. From a high vantage point, it looks less like a temporary settlement and more like a fledgling nation that has spread its wings across the sand and rock. There are hundreds of thousands of tents, perhaps more than 1 million, arranged in a precise, almost divine geometry around a sacred center. They are organized by tribe, each with its own banner fluttering in the hot, gritty wind: the Lion of Judah, the Wolf of Benjamin, the Serpent of Dan. The air, thick with the heat of the Sinai Peninsula, carries a symphony of life: the bleating of sheep and goats, the lowing of cattle, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer striking an anvil, the murmur of countless conversations, the laughter of children chasing each other through the narrow avenues between the tent ropes, and underlying it all, a constant, humming anticipation. It is the sound of a people waiting. They have been waiting for 2 years. 2 years since the sky split open with fire and plagues, since the waters of the Red Sea stood up like walls of solid jade, since the terror of Egypt was left behind, a fatting nightmare on a distant shore. They are no longer slaves. They are a free people, God's people, and they are standing on the very precipice of their destiny. Just to the north, beyond the haze of the horizon, lies the land promised to their fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, a land they have only heard about in stories whispered by their mothers, a land described in colors and textures they can barely imagine: green valleys, flowing streams, hillsides dotted with olive trees, and fields heavy with grain. A land, they are told, that flows with milk and honey. Here in the pale, sun-bleached wilderness of Paran, such a place sounds like a myth, a dream you can't quite hold on to after you wake up. Yet, it is real. It is close. They can almost feel the texture of its soil under their feet. In the center of this vast, temporary city stands a tent unlike any other. This is the tabernacle, the dwelling place of the Most High. Its fine linen curtains, embroidered with blue, purple, and scarlet, seem almost to absorb the harsh sunlight, creating a pocket of serene holiness amidst the chaos of the camp. And near the tabernacle is the tent of Moses. It is a humble abode, no grander than any other leader, but from it emanates an authority that holds this restless nation together. Inside, Moses feels the weight of it all. He is a man who walks and talks with God, a man who has seen the divine fire and heard the divine voice. Yet he is also a man who feels the press of every single human concern in the camp. He feels their thirst, their hunger, their fear, their impatience. His shoulders, though strong, are stooped with the burden of leadership. Face, which once shone with a terrifying residual light from his encounter with God on Mount Sinai, is now etched with the deep lines of a shepherd responsible for a flock of millions. He sits on a simple wooden stool, a clay tablet on his lap, but his eyes are distant, looking through the canvas walls of his tent and out towards the north. The waiting is becoming unbearable, not just for the people, but for him. The promise is so near, and yet it remains an unknown quantity, a shrouded territory. How can he lead them into a land he has never seen? How can he prepare them for a future that is only a divine whisper in his ear? It is in this moment of quiet contemplation that the presence fills the tent. There is no sound, no flash of light, but the air thickens, grows heavy with a silent, vibrant power that is both comforting and terrifying. Moses doesn't need to look up. He knows. The Lord is with him. And then the voice, not an audible sound that strikes the ear, but a thought that forms, clear and resonant, in the depths of his mind. Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. The instruction is simple, practical. It is an acknowledgement of the human need to see, to touch, to understand what lies ahead. God is not asking for blind faith in this moment. He is inviting them to take a look, to see for themselves the goodness of the inheritance he has prepared. But there is a condition, a crucial detail that follows. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a chief among them. This is not to be a mission for common soldiers or young, adventurous scouts. This is a task for the leadership, the chieftains, the respected elders whose words carry weight, whose judgment the people trust. It's a brilliant strategy, for if these men, the very pillars of their respective tribes, come back with a good report, who could possibly doubt it? Their testimony will become the foundation of the nation's courage. The responsibility is immense. The fate of the entire military campaign, the entire national project, will rest on the character and perception of these 12 men. Moses rises, the divine instruction settling into him not as a burden, but as a clear course of action. The waiting is over. It is time to act. He steps out of his tent, blinking in the harsh afternoon sun. The hum of the camp seems to quiet for a moment as he calls for his aides. The process of selection begins. A runner is sent to the camp of Reuben, the firstborn son of Jacob. The elders confer. They know the man for this task. He is respected, a man of standing, a man named Shammua, son of Zachar. The name means renowned, and he is. He is known for his steady hand and considered opinions. When he is summoned to Moses' tent, he comes with a quiet dignity, his face a mask of solemn acceptance. He understands the gravity of the mission. Next, the call goes out to the tribe of Simeon. They choose Shaphat, son of Hori. His name means judge, and he is known for his sharp, analytical mind. He is a man who weighs evidence carefully, who looks at a problem from every angle before coming to a conclusion. He has a reputation for prudence, which some might call caution, and so it continues, a procession of the tribe's best and brightest. From the great and powerful tribe of Judah comes a man whose name will echo through eternity, though at this moment he is simply a trusted leader. His name is Caleb, son of Jephunneh. There is a fire in Caleb's eyes, a rugged intensity that sets him apart. His name is related to the word for dog, and perhaps there is something of that in him, a fierce, unwavering loyalty, a tenacity that doesn't let go. He is a man of the earth, strong, grounded, his faith as solid and unshakable as the mountains of the wilderness he has come to know so well. He accepts the commission not just with solemnity, but with a barely concealed eagerness. He has been waiting for this. He wants to see the land. He wants to claim the promise. From the tribe of Issachar, known for their understanding of the times, comes Igal, son of Joseph. From Benjamin, the fierce warrior tribe, Palti, son of Raphu. From Zebulun, Gadiel, son of Sodi. Each man is a leader, a prince in his own right, a man who has proven his worth in the 2 years since the Exodus. And then comes the summons for the representative of the tribe of Ephraim, one of the 2 powerful tribes descended from Joseph. The man who steps forward is a familiar face to Moses, one he has come to rely on more and more. His name is Hoshea, son of Nun. Hoshea has been Moses' aide, his lieutenant, since the very beginning. He was the one who stood with Moses at the foot of Mount Sinai when the glory of the Lord descended. He was the one who stayed in the tent of meeting, unwilling to depart from the place of God's presence. He was the general who led Israel's army to victory against the Amalekites at Rephidim, his arms held high by Aaron and Hur. Moses looks at this young man, Hoshea, whose name means salvation, and he feels a divine insight, a prophetic stirring. The mission ahead will require more than just human strength or military prowess. It will require a salvation that comes from God alone. Moses places a hand on his loyal apprentice's shoulder. The other 11 chosen men are watching. Your name is no longer Hoshea, Moses declares, his voice ringing with an authority that seems to come from beyond himself. You shall be called Joshua. He adds the divine prefix, Yah, to the young man's name. Yahweh is salvation. It is more than a name change. It is a commission, a prophecy, an anointing. It is a declaration that through this man, God will bring his people to victory. Joshua bows his head, a wave of awe and profound responsibility washing over him. He feels the weight of this new name, this new identity. He is no longer just Hoshea, the servant. He is Joshua, the instrument of God's deliverance. The team is assembled. From Dan, Amiel. From Asher, Sether. From Naphtali, Nabai. And from Gad, Jewel. 12 men, 12 chieftains, 12 pairs of eyes that will be the first of their nation to officially witness the promised land. They gather in Moses' tent, the air thick with anticipation. The flap of the tent is drawn shut, creating a world of shadow and focused silence, a stark contrast to the bustling camp outside. Before them, on a low wooden table, is the closest thing they have to a map, a piece of stretched leather on which Moses has traced the general outlines of the land, as described to him by God and perhaps pieced together from the tales of traders and travelers. It is a vague shape, a territory of the imagination more than a precise cartographical tool. He points a weathered finger at the southern edge. Go up from here into the Negev, he begins, his voice low and steady. The Negev, a name that means the dry land, the South Country. It is a harsh, semi-arid region of scrubland and dusty hills, a transitional zone between the utter desolation of the Sinai and the fertile lands to the north. From there, go up into the hill country. His finger traces a path northward into the mountainous spine that forms the heart of Canaan. He looks up, meeting the eyes of each man in turn. He wants to be sure they understand the full scope of their mission. This is not a mere sightseeing trip. It is a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation. See what the land is like, he continues, ticking off the objectives on his fingers. And the people who dwell in it, are they strong or weak? Are they few or many? What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What about their cities? Are they open camps, easy to raid, or are they strongholds with high walls and fortified gates? He pauses, letting the questions sink in. These are matters of life and death. The answers they bring back will determine the entire strategy for the coming invasion. A weak, scattered population in open villages is one thing. A strong, numerous people living in impenetrable fortresses is another entirely. And assess the land itself, Moses adds. Is the soil rich or poor? Are there forests? Is there wood for building and for fires? He is asking them to be geologists, agriculturalists, and military scouts all at once. They are to create a complete profile of the nation they are about to face. Then comes the final instruction, the one that lifts the mission from the purely military to the deeply spiritual. Be of good courage, he says, and his eyes seem to pierce through their anxieties, to speak directly to the core of their faith. And bring back some of the fruit of the land. This is the masterstroke. He doesn't just want a verbal report. He wants tangible evidence. He wants the people to see, touch, and taste the goodness of God's promise. He wants to replace their apprehension with a hunger for the inheritance that awaits them. It is now, he informs them, the season of the first ripe grapes. The timing is perfect. The briefing is over. The 12 men stand, their minds racing with the details of their charge. They are a diverse group. Some are probably filled with a thrill-seeking excitement, others with a grim sense of duty. Some, like Caleb and Joshua, are burning with a zealous faith. Others, perhaps the more pragmatic ones like Shaphat the judge, are already weighing the risks, calculating the odds. For 40 days, they will be on their own, deep in enemy territory. For 40 days, the future of Israel will be in their hands. They leave Moses' tent under the cover of a pre-dawn darkness, slipping out of the camp, not as a single group, but perhaps in pairs or threes, melting into the landscape like ghosts. They carry little: a water skin, a bag of dried dates and hard bread, a knife sheathed at their belt. Their greatest assets are their wits, their courage, and their ability to blend in. They would have traded their distinct Israelite garments for the rougher, more anonymous garb of Canaanite shepherds or traveling merchants. They would have coached themselves on accents, on local customs, on how to answer questions without revealing who they were or where they came from. The first few days are a grueling trek through the wilderness of Zin and into the Negev. The landscape is a study in brown and beige, a world of rock and sand under a relentless, brassy sun. The only green is the stubborn, thorny scrub that clings to life in the dry wadis. This is familiar territory, an extension of the wilderness they have known for 2 years. But then, slowly, a change begins. It starts subtly. A patch of grass, shockingly green, in the bed of a seasonal stream. A lone, twisted terebinth tree offering a sliver of shade. The soil under their feet becomes less sandy, more of a reddish loam. They are climbing, gaining elevation, and with each step, the world seems to be coming to life around them. They have crossed an invisible line. They are in Canaan. The psychological shift is immense. Every shadow could hold an enemy soldier. Every distant figure on a hilltop is a potential threat. They are hypervigilant, their senses sharpened to a razor's edge. They communicate with hand signals, with glances, their voices kept to a low whisper when they huddle together at night in a hidden ravine. As they move north into the hill country of what will one day be called Judea, the transformation of the land becomes breathtaking. The barren hills give way to rolling slopes terraced with olive groves, the silver-green leaves of the trees shimmering in the sun. They see fields of wheat and barley, golden and heavy-headed, ready for harvest. They walk past orchards of fig trees, their broad leaves offering cool shade, the sweet, earthy scent of ripening fruit hanging in the air. This land is not just habitable, it is alive, vibrant, and incredibly fertile. It is a garden compared to the desert they have left behind. A quiet awe begins to fill some of them. This is it. This is the promise. It is more beautiful than the stories ever described. They likely split up to cover more ground, agreeing on a rendezvous point. One pair might skirt the edges of a small village, observing the farmers as they work the fields, noting their tools, their strength, the number of fighting-aged men. They see that the people are indeed strong, not the gaunt, struggling nomads of the desert, but well-fed and robust. Another pair might risk entering a town's marketplace, their faces shrouded, pretending to be traders from a distant city. Here, they can assess the local economy, see the crafts, the pottery, the metalwork. They can listen to the cadence of the language, overhear the gossip, gauge the morale of the people. And they can get a close look at the city's defenses. They see the walls, not mud brick fences, but massive stone structures, thick and high, with imposing gates and watchtowers manned by soldiers in leather armor, carrying bronze-tipped spears and formidable-looking bows. The cities are not mere camps, they are fortresses, built to withstand a siege. A seed of doubt begins to sprout in the minds of the more cautious spies. The land is good, yes, but it is well defended. Taking it will not be easy. Their journey continues northward, a comprehensive survey of the land's spine. They travel as far north as Rahab, near the entrance of Hamath, giving them a full picture of the territory God has allotted to them. On their way back south, they pass through the region of Hebron. This ancient city, nestled in the Judean hills, is a place of deep historical and spiritual significance for them. It is where their patriarch, Abraham, lived and purchased a cave, the Cave of Machpelah, to bury his wife, Sarah. It is their first and only piece of real estate in this entire land. It is a place that should feel like coming home. Instead, it is a place of profound terror, for Hebron is the domain of the Anakim, the descendants of Anak. As the spies approach the city, perhaps hiding in a rocky outcrop overlooking its walls, they see them. The stories, the whispered legends they had heard from traders, had not prepared them for the reality. These men are giants, not in the mythical fairy tale sense, but in a way that is viscerally real and deeply intimidating. They are taller, broader, and more powerfully built than any men the spies have ever seen. They move with an air of absolute confidence, of effortless superiority. They are the lords of this land, and their physical presence is an overwhelming statement of power. Imagine the 10 spies, Shammua, Shaphat, and the others, huddled behind a rock, watching these men walk the city walls or stride through the fields. A cold dread begins to seep into their bones, a fear that is more than just the normal anxiety of a spy in enemy territory. It is a primal fear, the fear of the small and the weak in the presence of the overwhelmingly strong. Their own strength, their own courage, their own identity as God's chosen people seems to shrivel in the shadow of the Anakim. One of them might whisper, "Did you see the size of his spear? It was like a weaver's beam." Another adds, his voice trembling, "Their walls are built by giants for giants. How could we ever hope to scale them?" A new narrative begins to form in their minds, a narrative not of promise, but of peril, a narrative of their own inadequacy. It is here, in the shadow of Hebron, that the mission begins to fracture. Caleb and Joshua see the same giants, the same walls, but they are seeing them through a different lens. Their lens is the promise of God. They see the giants not as an insurmountable obstacle, but as a testimony to the richness of the land, a land so good it produces men of this stature. They see the walls not as a barrier, but as a challenge that God will help them overcome. But their quiet confidence is drowned out by the rising tide of their companions' fear. The most debilitating thought of all begins to take root in the minds of the 10. "We seem to ourselves like grasshoppers," they would later report. This is the heart of the matter. Their fear didn't just come from what they saw. It came from how they saw themselves in relation to it. They felt small, insignificant, and crushed before they ever fought a battle. And then, the final, devastating projection. "And so we seemed to them." They assumed their enemies saw them with the same contempt with which they now saw themselves. Their fear had become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Leaving Hebron behind, the spies are now a divided unit. 10 of them are consumed by what they have seen, their minds already formulating a report of warning and despair. 2 of them, Caleb and Joshua, are trying to hold onto the initial wonder, the evidence of God's goodness that they have witnessed everywhere. Their last stop before heading back to the wilderness is a place that will become legendary, the Valley of Eshcol. The name means cluster, and the reason for it becomes immediately apparent. The valley is a veritable paradise of vineyards. The vines are thick and ancient, heavy with clusters of grapes so large and luscious they seem unreal. The grapes are a deep, dusty purple, swollen with juice, and the sweet, intoxicating scent of them fills the air. This is the tangible proof Moses had asked for. This is the fruit of the land. They find a single cluster so massive that they have to cut it down, vine and all. They thread a pole through it, and it requires 2 men to hoist it onto their shoulders for the journey back. Can you picture the scene? 2 strong men, their muscles straining, carrying a single cluster of grapes between them. It's an image of almost absurd abundance, a divine exaggeration to make a point. They also gather pomegranates, their leathery red skin hiding a treasure of jewel-like seeds, and figs, dark and sticky with sweetness. They now have everything Moses asked for. They have a detailed intelligence report on the land, its people, and its fortifications. And they have the physical evidence of its incredible fertility. The 40 days are up. It is time to go home. The journey south is not a happy one. The weight of the fruit on their shoulders is countered by the heavy weight of fear in their hearts. The 10 spies talk amongst themselves, reinforcing their anxieties. Their initial mission to scout the land has subtly changed. They now see their mission as having to save their people from what they perceive as certain annihilation. They are not trying to be faithless. In their own minds, they are being responsible. They are the respected leaders, the chieftains. It is their duty to report the facts as they see them, to warn the people of the dangers ahead. We must be realistic, Shaphat might argue, his judicial mind weighing the evidence. The goodness of the land is irrelevant if we are all killed trying to take it. Caleb is a great warrior, another might say, but he is letting his zeal blind him. He did not see the Anakim the way I did. He did not feel the ground shake when they walked. They begin to rehearse their speeches, to craft their narrative. They will start with the good news. It is only fair. They will show the fruit. They will speak of the milk and honey. But then they will deliver the but that will change everything. The but that will drain all the hope out of the good news and leave only the sediment of fear. Caleb and Joshua sense the shift. They argue with them, trying to remind them of God's power, of the miracles they have already witnessed. Did God not deliver us from the entire Egyptian army? Caleb might have roared in frustration. Are these Anakim greater than Pharaoh and his chariots? The land is ours. God has given it to us. But fear is a more compelling preacher than faith, especially when it wears the mask of pragmatism. The 10 have made up their minds. They have reached a consensus. The report will be one of overwhelming, insurmountable threat. Their return to the camp at Kadesh Barnea is met with a surge of excitement. The whole nation seems to pour out to greet them, their faces a mixture of hope and anxiety. For 40 days, they have waited, imagining what their champions were seeing. Now, they would finally know. The 12 men are brought before Moses and Aaron in front of the entire assembly, gathered before the tent of meeting. The atmosphere is electric. Then, the spies who were tasked with carrying the fruit come forward. They lay down their burden, the enormous cluster of grapes from Eshcol, along with the pomegranates and figs. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. Eyes widen in disbelief. People push forward to get a better look. The promise is no longer a story. It is here. It is real. They can see it, smell it. A wave of joy and relief washes over the people. Shouts of praise and wonder fill the air. For a fleeting moment, faith is easy. The future seems bright and full of sweet fruit. Then one of the spies, perhaps Shammua, the renowned one from Reuben, steps forward to give the official report. He begins exactly as the 10 had planned. "We went to the land to which you sent us," he says, his voice projecting over the hushed crowd. "It certainly does flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit." He gestures to the magnificent display on the ground. A cheer goes up from the assembly. Moses and Aaron exchange a relieved glance. Then comes the word, the pivot, the but. However, Shammua continues, and the tone of his voice shifts, losing its warmth, taking on a hard edge of gravity. The crowd quiets instantly. The people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. He lets that sink in. He describes the high walls, the powerful warriors. He paints a picture not of a garden waiting to be picked, but of a fortress waiting to repel them. Then he delivers the strategic analysis, a roll call of doom. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negeb. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the hill country, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. He is describing an enemy that surrounds them on all sides. There is no easy way in. Every border is defended by a fierce and established people. The mood of the crowd begins to sour. The initial joy evaporates like morning mist, replaced by a growing murmur of concern. The magnificent fruit on the ground now seems less like a promise and more like a cruel joke, a treasure they can see but never possess. And then he delivers the final crushing blow. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. A wave of fear, palpable and cold, sweeps through the assembly. The Anakim, the giants. The name is spoken in a hushed, terrified whisper. The report has done its work. The seed of doubt has been planted, and it is growing with terrifying speed into a tree of outright panic. Seeing the hope draining from the people's faces, seeing the mission and the promise slipping away, Caleb can remain silent no longer. He strides forward, pushing past the other spies, his voice a roar of defiance that cuts through the growing despair. "Let us go up at once and occupy it," he thunders, his eyes blazing with faith. "For we are well able to overcome it." It is a breathtaking moment of courage, a single voice against the tide. He doesn't dispute the facts of the report. Yes, the people are strong. Yes, the cities are fortified. But he offers a different interpretation of those facts. He offers the interpretation of faith. His confidence is not in Israel's strength, but in God's. For a moment, his powerful conviction seems to steady the wavering crowd. Perhaps he is right. Perhaps they can do this. But the 10 will not allow it. Their own fear and their sense of duty compel them to extinguish this dangerous spark of courage. They immediately shout him down, their voices overlapping in their haste to refute him. "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are," they insist. And now, their report moves from a skewed perspective to an outright lie. A bad report meant to terrorize. The land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. It is a monstrous image. They paint the beautiful, fertile land as a malevolent entity that consumes those who try to live there. They are no longer reporting what they saw. They are reporting what they felt. They are weaponizing their own fear. And then they return to their most terrifying image, the one that broke their own nerve in the hills of Hebron. "And all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim. And we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them." That is the end. The image of being grasshoppers before giants is too powerful, too visceral. It shatters the last vestiges of the people's courage. The report is over, and it has been a catastrophic success. The faith of a nation has been broken by the testimony of 10 terrified leaders. As night falls on the camp, the despair blossoms into open rebellion. A sound begins to rise from the tents, a sound of bitter, heartbroken weeping. It is not the sound of mourning for a single lost loved one, but the sound of an entire nation mourning its own future, a future they now believe is impossible. The great wail of 2 million people echoes through the canyons of the wilderness, a lament for a dream that has died. The weeping gives way to anger. By morning, the people are gathered in furious mobs. They turn on their leaders. "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt," they cry, their voices thick with resentment. "Or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?" It is the ultimate act of apostasy. After all the miracles, after the liberation, after the revelation at Sinai, they are ready to trade it all for the familiar misery of slavery. Their fear has made them forget everything. They have lost their past and rejected their future. In their madness, they even propose the unthinkable. "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt." At this, Joshua, who has been silent until now, perhaps stunned by the turn of events, and Caleb can take no more. They perform the traditional act of profound grief and horror. They tear their clothes. They run into the midst of the mutinous crowd, pleading, trying one last time to turn the tide. The land, which we passed through to spy it out, is an exceedingly good land. Joshua cries, his voice filled with anguish. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. What an incredible phrase. They are bread for us. He is saying that the enemy, which seems so formidable, will be their nourishment, the very means of their strengthening. He is trying to completely reframe their perspective. Their protection is removed from them, he insists, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. It is the perfect summary of a faith-filled worldview. It acknowledges the enemy, but focuses on God's presence. But the people are beyond listening. Their ears are deafened by their own terror. The crowd's anger now turns on these two voices of faith. Stone them, someone shouts, and the cry is taken up by the mob. People begin to pick up rocks, their faces twisted with rage. The lives of Joshua and Caleb are hanging by a thread. And then, in that moment of ultimate crisis, it happens. A blinding, terrifying light erupts from the tent of meeting. The glory of the Lord, a visible manifestation of God's own presence, appears before the entire assembly. The rocks fall from their hands. The angry shouts die in their throats. The entire camp falls silent, paralyzed by a holy terror that eclipses all their other fears. The divine voice speaks again in the mind of Moses, and the words are filled with a deep, sorrowful anger. How long will this people despise me? And how long will they not believe in me, in spite of all the signs that I have done among them? I will strike them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. It is the second time God has made this offer to Moses. The first was after the sin of the golden calf. He offers to wipe the slate clean, to start over with his faithful servant. But Moses, once again, proves himself to be the ultimate shepherd of his people, even when they are acting like a rebellious, self-destructive flock. He steps into the breach, placing himself between God's righteous anger and the people's deserved fate. He doesn't argue that the people are innocent. He knows they are guilty. Instead, he appeals to God's own character, his own reputation. Then the Egyptians will hear of it, Moses pleads, and the other nations who have heard the report of you will say, "It is because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land that he swore to give to them, that he has killed them in the wilderness. And now, please let the power of the Lord be great as you have promised," saying, "The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, forgiving iniquity and transgression." He asks for pardon, not based on the people's merit, but on God's mercy. God hears his prayer. "I have pardoned according to your word," comes the reply. The nation will be spared from immediate annihilation, but there are consequences. Actions born of fear and unbelief have a terrible cost. The sentence is pronounced, and it is a staggering tragedy. But truly, as I live, the Lord declares, none of the men who have seen my glory and my signs that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and yet have put me to the test these 10 times, and have not obeyed my voice, shall see the land that I swore to give to their fathers. The entire generation that came out of Egypt, every person 20 years old and upward who had grumbled and rebelled, is condemned. They will not enter the land of promise. They have reached the very border of their destiny, only to be turned away. Their punishment is to be a mirror of their sin. They longed for the wilderness, and the wilderness is what they will get. For 40 years, the Lord decrees, 1 year for each of the 40 days that you spied out the land, you shall bear your iniquity. Your dead bodies shall fall in this wilderness. They will wander aimlessly until the last member of that faithless generation has passed away. Their children, the very ones they were so sure would become a prey, will be the ones to inherit the land. They will grow up as children of the desert, and they will be the ones to claim the promise their parents forfeited. And of the 12 spies, the sentence is specific. Joshua and Caleb, because they had a different spirit and followed God fully, will be spared. They alone of their generation will live to cross the Jordan. But as for the other 10, the men who brought the bad report and sowed the seeds of fear and rebellion, their judgment is swift and terrible. As Moses is relaying God's verdict to the people, those 10 men are struck down by a plague before the Lord. Their mission, which began with such honor and responsibility, ends in disgrace and death. The story of this first spy mission is a profound and heartbreaking tragedy. It's a story about how 12 men were sent to scout a piece of land, but ended up revealing the landscape of their own hearts. They all saw the same things: the fruit, the cities, the giants. But their reports were wildly different. 10 of them saw the giants as bigger than God. 2 of them saw God as bigger than the giants. And that perspective, that simple choice of what to focus on, made all the difference. It's a gentle reminder, perhaps, as we drift off to sleep, that the obstacles in our own lives often look bigger or smaller, depending on the lens through which we choose to see them. The choice between fear and faith is one we make every day, in small ways and large. And for that generation of Israelites, one night of fear, born from a bad report, cost them everything. 40 years. It is a length of time that can feel like an eternity. And in the life of a nation born in the desert, it was exactly that. 40 years is long enough for an entire generation to be born, grow up, and come of age knowing nothing but the taste of manna in the morning and the sight of a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. The men and women who had trembled at the report of the 10 spies at Kadesh Barnea were now gone. Their whispers of rebellion and their longing for Egypt had been silenced. One by one, their bodies laid to rest under the shifting sands of the Sinai, Paran, and Zin. A great and tragic promise had been kept. Not one of them, save 2, had lived to see this day. Now a new Israel stands poised on the plains of Moab, at a place called Shittim, the place of the acacia trees. This is a different people. Their faces are not pale from the brick pits of Goshen, but are burnished dark by a lifetime under the desert sun. Their hands are calloused, their bodies lean and hard. They are a nation forged in the crucible of the wilderness, disciplined by the law given at Sinai, and sustained by the daily miracles of God. The fear that paralyzed their fathers is not their inheritance. Their inheritance lies just across the river. From the edge of the camp, they can see it. The Jordan River, swollen and muddy with the spring rains and the melting snows from Mount Hermon, carving a green ribbon through the arid landscape. And beyond it, rising from the plains, is the first great bastion of the Promised Land, the city of Jericho. Even from this distance, it is an imposing sight, a smudge of sun-baked brick and stone that radiates an aura of ancient, impregnable strength. It is the gatekeeper, the lock on the door to their future, and the man who holds the key is Joshua. He is no longer the young aide, the eager apprentice. The years have carved new lines on his face, and his hair is streaked with gray. The fire in his eyes that Caleb saw all those years ago has not dimmed. It has settled into the steady, burning ember of a leader who has walked with God and learned the hard lessons of patience and obedience. The spirit of wisdom that was upon Moses now rests on him. But so does the weight of memory. He remembers Kadesh Barnea. He remembers the weeping, the rebellion, the terrible judgment. He remembers the faces of the 10 spies as they were struck down by the plague. The history of that first, failed mission is a scar on the memory of the nation, and Joshua feels it more keenly than anyone. He knows that he cannot, must not, repeat the mistakes of the past. The people's morale is high, their faith is strong, but they are still human. They are still susceptible to fear. And Jericho is a fearsome sight. He needs intelligence. He needs to know what is happening inside those walls. But he will not send another committee. The politics of the first mission, one leader from each tribe, had been its undoing. It had become a fact-finding mission that devolved into a debate, a referendum on God's promise. This time, there would be no debate. The mission is not to determine if they should take the land. The mission is to determine how. It is to be a purely tactical operation, swift, silent, and secret. Joshua summons 2 men to his tent. The scriptures don't give us their names, and perhaps that is the point. They are not chieftains or princes. They are not famous. They are simply 2 of his best men, anonymous, effective, and utterly trustworthy. We can imagine them as young men, perhaps in their late 20s or early 30s, born and raised in the wilderness. They would have learned to track, to hunt, to move silently across treacherous terrain, to read the signs of the land and the sky. They would be disciplined soldiers, their faith uncomplicated by the memory of slavery or the comforts of a settled life. Their entire existence has been a journey toward this one moment. Let's call them Salmon and Zadok, not because we know these were their names, but to give them a shape in our minds. Salmon is the elder of the 2, steady and observant, his mind always calculating, weighing the risks. Zadok is younger, quicker, filled with a restless energy and a daring that sometimes borders on recklessness. They are a balanced team. They enter Joshua's tent, the setting sun casting long shadows through the open flap. Joshua is alone, bent over a crude map scratched into a clay tablet. He looks up, and his eyes are intense. There is no grand speech, no elaborate briefing. His instructions are direct and to the point. "Go," he says, his voice low. "Look over the land, especially Jericho. Especially Jericho." That is the focal point. He needs to know the city's layout, the strength of its garrison, the routine of the sentries, the location of its water supply, and most importantly, the morale of its people. Are they confident? Are they prepared for a siege? Or are they afraid? The answer to that last question could be the key to the entire campaign. The two spies nod. They understand the stakes. They are not just risking their own lives. A compromised mission could alert the king of Jericho, giving him time to prepare, to call for aid from his allies. They must be ghosts, seen by no one, heard by no one. They slip out of Joshua's tent as darkness falls, melting into the vast Israelite camp, and then out into the no man's land between the camp and the river. Their first obstacle is the Jordan itself. It is not the gentle, trickling stream depicted in so many paintings. It is the time of the spring harvest, and the river is a raging, churning torrent of brown water, overflowing its banks. There are no bridges, no ferries. To cross it is to risk being swept away and drowned. But they are men of the wilderness. They find a place downstream where the current is slightly less ferocious, and under the sliver of a new moon, they commit themselves to the flood. The water is shockingly cold, its power immense. It tears at them, trying to drag them under. But they are strong swimmers, fighting their way through the current until they finally pull themselves, gasping and exhausted, onto the western bank. They have done it. They are in the land of Canaan. They lie hidden in a thicket of reeds until their clothes are dry, and the first hints of dawn begin to lighten the eastern sky. Then they begin the careful approach to Jericho. The city looms larger and larger, and they begin to appreciate the scale of its defenses. Ancient Jericho is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth, and its fortifications are the product of centuries of engineering. What they see is not a single wall, but a system of two. First, there is a massive retaining wall of stone, perhaps 12 to 15 feet high, built at the base of the earthen mound, or tell, upon which the city sits. On top of this retaining wall is a second wall of mud brick, 6 feet thick, and perhaps 20 or 30 feet high. And behind that, higher up on the slope of the mound, is the main city wall itself, even taller and thicker. It is a defense in depth, a formidable obstacle designed to break the will of any attacker. Soldiers patrol the tops of the walls, their bronze helmets and spear tips glinting in the morning sun. The spies know that a frontal assault would be a suicidal act of attrition. They need to get inside. They wait until the sun is higher, when the great bronze-sheathed gates of the city swing open to allow farmers out to their fields and to admit the morning caravans. They pull their cloaks around them, affecting the shuffling gait of weary travelers, and merge with a crowd of merchants driving donkeys laden with pottery and textiles. They keep their heads down, their eyes averted, their hearts pounding a steady rhythm against their ribs. They pass under the shadow of the gatehouse, past the stern-faced guards, and they are in. The inside of Jericho is a chaotic explosion of senses. The streets are narrow, winding alleys, packed with people, livestock, and merchant stalls. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, baking bread, spices, unwashed bodies, and penned animals. The sounds are a cacophony of shouting vendors, braying donkeys, crying children, and the constant murmur of the Canaanite tongue, a language familiar enough to their own Hebrew for them to understand snippets of conversation. They spend the day moving through the city, their eyes and ears open, absorbing every detail. They pace out distances, note the locations of the main squares and the pathways to the walls. They see the palace of the king, a more substantial structure near the city's center, with more guards at its gates. They see women drawing water from a central well and realize that the city's water source is inside the walls. It can hold out for a long time in a siege. But they also notice something else. They notice the fear. It is in the furtive glances people cast at them. Two strangers who are clearly not merchants. It is in the hushed conversations that stop abruptly when they draw near. It is in the way the soldiers on the walls seem to be watching the eastern horizon towards the river with a nervous intensity. The city is a taut drum, vibrating with anxiety. As evening approaches, they need a place to stay, a place where they can gather more information without drawing undue attention. A public inn would be too conspicuous. They need a place on the margins, a place where questions are not asked, where strangers are a part of the business. Their search leads them to the city wall itself. In a clever and space-saving piece of architecture, some of the houses of Jericho were built directly into the mud brick ramparts. It is in one of these houses, a house with a window that looks out over the fields beyond the city, that their mission takes a turn none of them could have predicted. The house belongs to a woman named Rahab, and Rahab is a prostitute. From a purely tactical standpoint, their choice makes perfect sense. An establishment like Rahab's, part inn, part tavern, part brothel, is a natural nexus of information. Soldiers, merchants, travelers, they all pass through. Tongues are loosened by wine and companionship. Secrets are spilled. It is the perfect listening post. They knock on her door, two weary travelers looking for a room and a meal. Rahab herself opens the door. Let us pause for a moment and consider this woman. The Bible gives her a single, stark label, but she was a person of immense complexity. She was likely a woman who had run out of other options in a patriarchal society. She may have been a widow, or an abandoned wife, or simply a woman from a poor family with no dowry. Her profession placed her at the very bottom of the social ladder, an object of both desire and contempt. But survival on the margins requires a certain set of skills. Rahab would have been shrewd, a keen judge of character, an expert at reading the hidden intentions behind a man's eyes. She was a survivor. When she sees the two men at her door, she knows instantly that they are not ordinary travelers. There is a hardness to them, an alertness in their eyes that a simple farmer or merchant would not possess. She recognizes them as outsiders, as something dangerous. And in that danger, she senses an opportunity. She ushers them in, her face a mask of professional hospitality, but her mind is racing. Inside, her home is simple, probably just a few rooms, furnished with woven mats, a few clay jars, and a low table. But it is clean, and from a small charcoal brazier comes the smell of baking bread. The most prominent feature of her home, however, is the roof. Like most houses in the region, it is flat, a valuable extra living and working space. And at this time of year, her roof is covered with stalks of flax, laid out in the sun to dry. The flax would later be processed and spun into linen thread, a common household industry. This mundane detail of domestic life is about to become a crucial element in the salvation of these spies. The men have barely settled in when a hard, authoritative knock rattles the door. Zadok and Salmon exchange a panicked glance. They are caught. There is nowhere to run. The voice from outside is unmistakable. It is the city guard. We know the spies are in here. The king commands you to bring them out. This is the moment of decision for Rahab. Her entire life has been a series of calculated risks, of playing the odds to survive another day. She could give them up. It would be the safe, sensible thing to do. It would earn her the favor of the king and his soldiers. To protect these strangers, these enemies of her city, is an act of treason, punishable by a swift and brutal death. But Rahab has been watching, and she has been listening. She has heard the stories, the same stories that have terrified the rest of her city. She has heard of the God of the Israelites, a God who drowned the most powerful army on earth in the sea, and who laid waste to the kingdoms on the other side of the river. She has pieced together the intelligence that has filtered into her establishment, and she has come to a different conclusion than the king in his palace. The king believes his walls can protect him. Rahab believes that no wall is high enough to stand against the God of heaven and earth. In a stunning act of faith and defiance, she makes her choice. Quickly, she hisses to the two men, her eyes wide with urgency. To the roof. She hustles them up the short ladder and points to the thick blanket of flax stalks. Hide under these. Do not make a sound. They burrow into the dry, rustling flax, their knives in their hands, their bodies tense, listening. Rahab takes a deep breath, smooths down her tunic, and composes her face into an expression of weary innocence. She goes to the door and opens it just a crack, peering out at the hard-faced soldiers. "Yes," she asks, her voice steady. "The king has sent us," the captain of the guard says, pushing his way into her home. "Two men, Israelites, came to you tonight. Where are they?" Rahab puts on a masterful performance. She feigns a bit of confusion. then lets a look of dawning realization cross her face. "Ah, yes, the travelers," she says, her tone casual. "They were here, but I had no idea they were Israelites. They seemed like simple men from the north." She looks towards the city gate. "They left a little while ago, just before the gate was shut for the night. If you hurry, you can probably catch them. They can't have gone far." It is a simple, plausible lie, delivered with the confidence of a woman who has had to lie many times to survive. She has given the soldiers a new objective, a clear course of action that takes them away from her and her house. The captain hesitates for a moment, looking around the small room, his eyes suspicious. He is trying to decide whether to believe her or to tear her house apart. But her story is convincing, and the desire for a swift capture is strong. He makes his decision. To the fords of the Jordan, he barks at his men. "Search for them there." The soldiers thunder out of her house and down the narrow street. Rahab closes the door, her back pressing against the wood, her heart hammering in her chest. She waits, listening until the sound of their running footsteps has faded into the night. The immediate danger is past. She climbs the ladder to the roof. The two spies are emerging from the flax, their faces pale in the moonlight. They look at her with a new respect, a new understanding. This woman has just risked everything for them. Before they can even thank her, she begins to speak, and her words are a torrent, a confession that has been building within her for weeks, perhaps months. "I know," she says, her voice a low, intense whisper. "I know that the Lord has given you this land." She states it as an undeniable fact. "Not I think or I fear, but I know." Zadok and Salmon are stunned into silence. How could this pagan woman speak with such certainty? "The terror of you has fallen upon us," she continues, her words tumbling out. "All the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. We are all trying to act brave. The king is giving speeches about our strong walls. The soldiers are sharpening their swords, but it is a lie. Inside, we are melting like wax in the sun. This is priceless intelligence. It is the very thing Joshua needed to know. The city that looks so strong from the outside is hollowed out by fear on the inside. For we have heard," she explains, "and now they understand. The ancient world was not as disconnected as we might imagine. News traveled along the caravan routes, carried by merchants and travelers, tales growing with each telling. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt. Think about that. The Exodus was 40 years ago. A generation has passed. Yet the story of that miracle is still being told, still carrying enough power to terrify the inhabitants of Jericho. It has become a legend, a foundational piece of evidence for the power of Israel's God. And we have heard what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction," she adds. This news is more recent, more immediate. The destruction of those two powerful kingdoms, just on the other side of the river, was a clear and present warning. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. Then she makes the statement that elevates her from a mere informant to a prophetess, a theologian in the most unlikely of circumstances. She looks at these two foreign soldiers, representatives of an invading army, and she declares her allegiance. "For the Lord your God," she says, and the words seem to hang in the cool night air. "He is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath." It is one of the most profound confessions of faith in the entire Old Testament. In a world teeming with local deities, with gods of the hills and gods of the valleys, gods of the sun and gods of the storm, this woman, from the depths of paganism, correctly identifies the God of Israel as the one true sovereign God over all creation. She has done what the generation of Israelites at Kadesh Barnea failed to do. She has looked at the terrifying circumstances and seen God's supreme power behind them. Her confession now turns into a plea. She has acted on her faith, and now she is asking for its reward. She is negotiating the salvation of her family. "Now then, please swear to me by the Lord, since I have dealt kindly with you, that you also will deal kindly with my father's house, and give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death." She is not asking for a simple promise. She is demanding a sacred oath, an oath sworn in the name of the very God she has just confessed, an oath that a man of honor and faith cannot break. Salmon and Zadok are moved by her courage and her faith. They see the hand of God in this strange encounter. They were sent to spy out the city, but they have found a convert, an ally. "Our life for yours," Salmon says, making the oath. "If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you." The deal is struck. Now they must escape. The city gates are locked until morning. To be found at dawn would mean certain death for them and for Rahab. But her house provides a unique solution. She leads them to a window, a small, unadorned opening in the thick mud brick wall of her home. The night air blows in, carrying the scent of the open fields. Below them is a sheer drop to the ground outside the city's main defenses. She fetches a rope, thick and strong. It is likely a rope she used for hauling goods or bundles of flax up to her roof. One by one, she lets them down through the window. Their feet touch the ground, and they are free. But before they melt into the darkness, she gives them one last piece of crucial advice. "Go into the hills," she whispers down to them. "Do not go straight to the river. The king's men are searching for you there. Hide in the hills for 3 days until the pursuers have returned. Then you can go on your way." It is sound, tactical advice, born of local knowledge. They look up at her, a silhouette in the window. They need to give her the sure sign she asked for. "Behold," Zadok says, his voice a low command. "When we come into the land, you shall tie this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down." He may have been gesturing to the very rope she used, or perhaps They gave her a separate cord of scarlet thread, a common item. The color is significant. Scarlet, the color of blood. A thin line of crimson that will mark this house as a place of sanctuary, a place passed over by destruction. It is a symbol of life in the midst of death, a sign of a covenant made between a prostitute and the spies of God. And you must bring your father and mother and brothers and all your father's household into your house, Salmon adds, clarifying the terms of the oath. If any of them go out of the doors of your house into the street, their blood shall be on their own head, and we shall be guiltless. But if a hand is laid on anyone who is with you in the house, his blood shall be on our head. The salvation she has negotiated is conditional on her family's obedience, on them remaining within the sphere of protection marked by the cord. And one last thing, he says, his voice stern. If you tell this business of ours, then we shall be guiltless of this oath that you have made us swear. The secrecy is paramount. Her life, her family's life, and the success of the mission all depend on it. According to your words, so be it, she replies from the window. The agreement is sealed. She pulls up the rope, and the spies disappear into the night. Rahab takes the scarlet cord, and with trembling hands, she ties it to the lattice of her window. It is a flag of hope, a thread of treason, a declaration of her faith hanging for all the world and for the armies of God to see. The two spies follow her advice. They head not east toward the Jordan, but west into the rugged limestone hills that rise behind Jericho. They find a cave, a fissure in the rock, a place to hide. For 3 days and 3 nights they wait. It is a tense and uncomfortable time. They are still in enemy territory. They have little food or water. At night, they can see the torches of the search parties moving through the plains below, a network of angry fireflies seeking their lives. During the day, they remain hidden, sleeping in shifts, speaking in low whispers. They talk about what has happened. They marvel at the providence of God, who led them not to a warrior or a prince, but to a prostitute on the city wall. They speak of her faith, which seemed brighter and purer than that of many in their own camp. They now understand the true state of Jericho. The report they will bring back to Joshua will not be about the height of the walls or the number of soldiers. It will be about the melting hearts of the people. The victory, they realize, is already assured. God has gone before them, not only to prepare the way, but to prepare the heart of an unlikely ally who would save them. On the 3rd day, they see the search parties give up and return to the city. The coast is clear. Under the cover of night, they make their way down from the hills, skirt the city, and make the perilous crossing of the Jordan once more, returning to the camp at Shittim. They are brought immediately to Joshua's tent. He is waiting, his face etched with worry, but also with prayerful hope. They stand before their commander, their clothes torn and dirty from their ordeal, but their eyes are bright with conviction. Their report is the antithesis of the one delivered at Kadesh Barnea 40 years earlier. There is no flowery language, no catalog of threats, no fearful hyperbole. It is short, confident, and to the point. Truly, they say, their voices ringing with the certainty of what they have seen and heard. The Lord has given all the land into our hands, and also all the inhabitants of the land melt away because of us. That is all Joshua needs to hear. The intelligence from Rahab is confirmed. The psychological battle is already won. The people of Canaan are defeated not by Israel's swords, but by the reputation of Israel's God. The time for waiting is over. The time for crossing the Jordan and claiming the promise has come. And so, this second spy mission, a mission born from the failure of the first, becomes a resounding success. It is a story that turns our expectations upside down. Where 12 respected chieftains failed because of fear, 2 anonymous soldiers succeeded because of the faith of a foreign prostitute. It is a gentle reminder that the qualifications for being used by God have nothing to do with our social standing, our reputation, or our past. They have everything to do with a heart that, even in a city destined for destruction, is willing to look up and recognize the one true God of heaven and earth, and to tie a scarlet cord of hope in the window. The years that followed the conquest of Canaan under Joshua were a turbulent and messy time. The grand, unified vision of a nation marching as one had fractured. The 12 tribes, now settled in their allotted territories, grew more and more distinct, their loyalties turning inward to their own clans and families. There was no king, no central capital, no standing army. The anchor of leadership that Moses and then Joshua had provided was gone, and the nation began to drift on the chaotic tides of its own impulses. It was an age of heroes and villains, of profound faith and shocking depravity, an era best summarized by the haunting refrain of the Book of Judges. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This freedom, unmoored from divine guidance, inevitably led to a dark and repeating cycle. The people would forget the Lord, turning to the local Canaanite deities, the Baals and the Asherahs, the gods of rain and fertility that promised tangible results for their crops and livestock. This apostasy would lead to a weakening of their spiritual and national identity, and God would allow them to fall under the hand of an oppressor, a neighboring king, a warlord. A band of raiders would rise up and make their lives miserable. Then, in their suffering, the people would cry out to the Lord for deliverance, and God, in his mercy, would raise up a judge, not a black-robed magistrate, but a military champion, a charismatic leader who would rally the people and throw off the yoke of the enemy. There would be peace for a time, and then the cycle would begin again. Our story tonight finds Israel deep in the trough of this cycle, in the grip of one of the most demoralizing oppressions they had ever faced. For 7 long years, the Midianites had been their scourge. The Midianites, along with their cousins the Amalekites and other nomadic tribes from the eastern deserts, were not an occupying army. They were something far more insidious. They were a seasonal plague. They would wait, lurking in the deserts, until the Israelites had done all the hard work, the plowing, the planting, the tending of the crops. Then, just as the harvest was ready, they would sweep in from the east. The Bible describes their invasion force with a terrifying elemental power. They came like locusts for number, a great swarm of humanity that covered the land. Their camels, the ancient world's equivalent of light cavalry, were without number, as the sand that is on the seashore for multitude. They would pour into the fertile valleys, especially the great breadbasket of Israel, the valley of Jezreel. They wouldn't just take the grain, they would devour everything. Their livestock would graze the fields down to bare earth. They would seize the Israelites' sheep, oxen, and donkeys. They left nothing behind, no sustenance, no seed for the next planting, no hope. And then, as quickly as they came, they would retreat back into the desert, leaving a destitute and starving people in their wake. The psychological effect of this was devastating. It was a strategy designed to break the spirit. The Israelites were reduced to fugitives in their own land. They abandoned their villages and farms and hid in dens, caves, and mountain strongholds. They lived like hunted animals, their national pride shattered, their faith in a God who had promised them a land of abundance, worn down to a threadbare whisper. They were a people under a curse, and their prayers, when they finally came, were the desperate cries of a people who had hit rock bottom. It is in this climate of pervasive fear that we meet our hero, and he is, perhaps, the most unlikely hero in the entire Bible. We find him not on a battlefield, not in a council of elders, not even on a public thrashing floor where a man would normally be processing his grain harvest. We find him in a winepress. Picture this. A winepress was essentially a pit carved into the rock where grapes would be trodden underfoot. It was a sunken, hidden place. And in this pit, a young man named Gideon from the small clan of Abiezer in the tribe of Manasseh is not pressing grapes. He is thrashing wheat. He is beating a handful of grain with a stick in a hole in the ground. Hopping the high sides of the winepress will hide his small, pathetic activity from the prying eyes of any passing Midianite patrol. This single image tells us everything we need to know about Gideon and the state of Israel. He is not a warrior, he is a hider. He is not defiant, he is afraid. He is not planning a rebellion, he is just trying to save enough food for his family to survive. He is the embodiment of his cowed and broken nation. As he works, the rhythmic thud of his stick against the grain echoing in the small space, a figure appears at the edge of the winepress. Gideon looks up, startled, his hand instinctively going to the knife at his belt. The stranger is just sitting there, under the shade of a nearby terebinth tree, watching him. There is an aura of calm and authority about him that is unsettling. This is no Midianite raider. The Lord is with you, O mighty warrior, the stranger says, his voice calm and clear. The words are so utterly disconnected from Gideon's reality that they sound like a cruel joke. Gideon, down in his hiding hole, his heart pounding with fear, being called a mighty warrior, He looks at his own trembling hands, at the pitiful amount of wheat at his feet, and a surge of bitter, long-suppressed anger rises within him. He is tired of the stories, tired of the promises that don't match the misery of his life. "Please, sir," Gideon replies, and his voice is dripping with sarcasm. "If the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonderful deeds that our fathers told us about, saying, 'Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt?' But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian." It is a raw, honest complaint. It is the voice of a man whose faith has been crushed by experience. He has heard the grand old stories of the Exodus, of the conquest, but they feel like fairy tales from another world. His world is one of hunger, fear, and the ever-present threat of the Midianite horde. His God, as far as he can see, is a God who has disappeared. The stranger, who we now understand is the angel of the Lord, a divine presence in human form, doesn't rebuke him for his lack of faith. He meets Gideon's doubt with a command. "Go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian," the angel says. "Do not I send you?" This is even more absurd to Gideon than being called a mighty warrior. This might of yours. What might? The might of a man hiding in a hole. He immediately begins to make excuses, to protest his inadequacy. "Please, Lord, how can I save Israel?" he asks, his voice now pleading rather than sarcastic. "Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." It is the classic protest of the chosen. Moses said he was slow of speech. Jeremiah said he was too young. And Gideon sees himself as a nobody from nowhere, the runt of the litter from a backwater clan. He is a man with a deeply ingrained inferiority complex, and he is asking a perfectly logical question. Why him? The answer he receives is the only one that matters. The same answer God gives to all who feel inadequate for his calling. "But I will be with you," the angel says, "and you shall strike the Midianites as one man." The promise is absolute. But Gideon is a man who needs more than just a promise. He needs proof. He is a cautious, skeptical soul, a product of his cynical times. He asks for a sign, a confirmation that this is truly a divine encounter. He hastily prepares a meal, a young goat and unleavened cakes, and brings it to the angel. He is instructed to place the meat and the cakes on a rock and pour the broth over them. Then the angel touches the offering with the tip of the staff that is in his hand. A fire flares up from the rock, consuming the food in an instant. And then the angel vanishes. Gideon is left alone, his eyes wide with terror. He has seen a manifestation of God, and in the ancient world, to see God was to die. "Alas, O Lord God," he cries out, "for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But a voice of peace comes to him. "Peace be with you. Do not fear, you shall not die." And Gideon, in a flicker of nascent faith, builds an altar there and calls it "The Lord is Peace." His first mission is not against the Midianites, but against the idolatry in his own hometown. Under the cover of darkness, he tears down the local altar to Baal and the sacred pole dedicated to the goddess Asherah that stood beside it. It is his first tentative step of obedience, and it almost gets him killed. The next morning, the enraged townspeople want to execute him for his sacrilege, but his father, Josh, cleverly defends him, saying, "If Baal is a god, let him contend for himself." From that day on, Gideon gets a new name, Jerubbaal, which means let Baal contend against him. Now the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him. Filled with a new, albeit shaky, confidence, Gideon sounds the shofar, the ram's horn trumpet, and the men of his clan rally to him. He sends messengers throughout the northern tribes, and soon a great army begins to gather. 32,000 men. It is a respectable force, a tangible sign of hope. For the first time in 7 years, Israel is fighting back, but Gideon's inherent caution and doubt have not vanished. Starring at the massive Midianite encampment that fills the valley of Jezreel to the north, even his army of 32,000 seems small. He needs more reassurance. He needs another sign. And so begins the famous incident of the fleece. He lays a fleece of wool on the thrashing floor and asks God for a very specific sign. Let the fleece be wet with dew in the morning, while all the ground around it is dry. It is a test, a demand for a boutique miracle, a manipulation of the laws of nature just to soothe his own anxiety. And God, in his incredible patience with this hesitant servant, condescends to his request. The next morning, Gideon wrings a full bowl of water from the fleece while the ground is bone dry. But even this is not enough for his doubting heart. Perhaps it was a fluke. Perhaps dew just naturally collects on wool. So he reverses the request, pushing his luck even further. Let it be dry on the fleece only, and on all the ground let there be dew. This is an even more unnatural request, and again, God graciously complies. The next morning, the fleece is perfectly dry, while the ground all around it is wet. Gideon has his proof. He can no longer doubt that God is with him. He has a divine commission, a divine presence, and now an army of 32,000 men. He is finally ready to fight. It is at this moment, with Gideon's confidence at its peak, that God pulls the rug out from under him. The people with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hand, the Lord says to him. Lest Israel boast over me, saying, my own hand has saved me. Imagine Gideon's reaction. Disbelief, frustration. He has just gone through this whole agonizing process of building up his courage, and now God tells him his army is too big. The whole point of the army was to give him a fighting chance. Now God wants to take that away. The divine logic is clear. God wants the victory to be so ridiculously impossible that no one could claim credit for it except him. But for Gideon, standing on the brink of battle, this is a terrifying proposition. Following God's instructions, he makes an announcement to the troops. Whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home. It is a standard clause in the laws of holy war, meant to ensure that the army is comprised only of willing and courageous fighters. But Gideon could never have been prepared for the result. He watches in stunned silence as 22,000 men, more than 2/3 of his entire army, turn around and walk away. The hillside, which had been buzzing with the energy of a great host, suddenly feels quiet and empty. He is left with only 10,000 men. The odds have just gone from daunting to dreadful. And then God speaks again. The people are still too many. Still too many. Gideon must have felt a cold knot of dread in his stomach. What is God doing? He is systematically stripping away every possible source of human security. Gideon obeys the next command. He takes his 10,000 remaining soldiers down to the spring of Harod to get a drink. It is a hot day. The men are thirsty, and God tells Gideon to watch how they drink. The scene is tense with a strange significance. The vast majority of the men, 9,700 of them, do the sensible, natural thing. They get down on their knees, put their faces right into the cool, refreshing water, and drink their fill. In doing so, they are vulnerable. Their heads are down, their weapons are set aside. They are oblivious to their surroundings. But there is a small, peculiar group, just 300 of them, who drink differently. They remain watchful. They crouch, scooping the water into their cupped hands and lapping it up to their mouths like a dog does with its tongue. Their heads are up. Their eyes are scanning the horizon. They are drinking, but they have not let down their guard for a single second. They are the vigilant ones, the ready ones. By the 300 men who lapped, the Lord tells Gideon, "I will save you and give the Midianites into your hand. Let all the others go to their homes." And so, another 9,700 men are sent away. Gideon is left with 300 soldiers. 300. He looks at his tiny band of men, and then he looks down into the valley, at the endless camp of the Midianites and their allies, an army of some 135,000 warriors. The odds are now over 400 to 1. This is no longer a battle. It is a suicide mission. All the confidence Gideon had built up through the signs, and the fleece must have evaporated in an instant, replaced by a stark, rational terror. He has been obedient, and his obedience has led him to the brink of an absurdity so profound it borders on madness. That night, Gideon sits in his camp on the slopes of Mount Gilboa, looking down at the enemy. The Midianite camp is a sea of campfires, stretching for miles across the valley floor, a sprawling city of black goat-hair tents. The sound of it drifts up on the night air, the murmur of a multitude, the restless shuffling and grunting of tens of thousands of camels. It is an overwhelming spectacle of human and animal power. And he, Gideon, is supposed to defeat this with 300 men. He is sleepless, his mind a whirlwind of fear and doubt. His faith is hanging by a single, frayed thread. It is in this moment of extreme vulnerability that God speaks to him once more. And this time, the words are not a command to reduce his forces further. They are an invitation. "Arise," the Lord says, his voice a quiet reassurance in the darkness. "Go down against the camp, for I have given it into your hand." It is the same promise as before, But God knows the heart of his servant. He knows that Gideon is terrified. He knows that another promise is not enough. And so, he makes a gracious, compassionate concession to Gideon's fear. But if you are afraid to go down, God adds gently, go down to the camp with Purah your servant, and you shall hear what they say, and afterward your hands shall be strengthened to go down against the camp. This is not a test. It is a gift. God is not rebuking Gideon for his fear. He is providing a remedy for it. He is inviting his fearful general on a secret two-man spy mission. The purpose of this mission is not to gather tactical intelligence, not to count the enemy or map their defenses. The purpose is to overhear a conversation, to receive a piece of spiritual intelligence that will finally, irrevocably, anchor Gideon's wavering faith. Gideon rouses his servant, Purah. They take no weapons, save perhaps a knife at their belts. They are to be shadows, invisible and silent. They slip out of the small Israelite camp and begin the perilous descent down the dark, rocky hillside. Every dislodged pebble sounds like an avalanche in the stillness of the night. Their hearts are pounding. They are not just entering an enemy camp. They are entering the very heart of their deepest fears. They reach the valley floor and creep toward the edge of the sprawling encampment. The sheer scale of it is even more intimidating up close. The air is thick with the smell of camels and cooking fires. The perimeter would have been guarded, so they move with infinite caution, flitting from shadow to shadow until they are close to one of the outer tents, a place where the sentries might be gathered. They find a hiding place, perhaps behind a large boulder or in a deep thicket of brush, close enough to hear the low murmur of voices from within a tent. They are eavesdropping on the enemy, and what they hear is not the confident talk of warriors on the eve of a great victory. They hear the hushed, anxious whispers of frightened men. One soldier is speaking to his comrade, his voice filled with a strange sense of dread. "I had a dream," the man says. "Behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian." Gideon, hiding in the darkness, listens, his breath caught in his throat. A cake of barley bread. This was not the food of warriors or kings. Barley was the cheapest of all grains, the food of the poor, the food of the oppressed. It was a perfect, humble symbol for the impoverished and downtrodden nation of Israel. The soldier continues, describing the surreal vision. The barley loaf came to the tent, and it struck it so that it fell and turned it upside down, and the tent lay flat. The dream is simple, almost comically so. A loaf of peasant bread rolling downhill demolishes a sturdy military tent, the symbol of the nomadic Midianite war machine. It is a dream of the weak, inexplicably overturning the strong. There is a moment of silence, and then the other soldier speaks, and his voice is not one of dismissal or confusion. It is a voice of pure, unadulterated terror, of supernatural certainty. He has understood the dream instantly. This is nothing else than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel, the man whispers, his voice trembling. God has given into his hand Midian and all the camp. This is the moment, the climax of Gideon's entire spiritual journey. Hiding in the dirt, a few feet from his mortal enemies, he hears his own name spoken. He hears God's promise of victory repeated, not from the mouth of an angel, not from a divine voice in his head, but from the mouth of a terrified Midianite soldier. The enemy themselves are prophesying their own defeat at his hands. It is the final, perfect, irrefutable sign. It is more powerful than the fleece, more convincing than the angelic fire. God has allowed him to listen in on the enemy's deepest fears, and in doing so, has obliterated his own. All the doubt, all the hesitation, all the anxiety that has plagued him from the beginning washes away in a sudden, overwhelming wave of absolute certainty. He has seen the battle from God's perspective. He now knows, with every fiber of his being, that the victory is already won. His response is immediate and instinctive. Right there, in the shadow of the enemy camp, with the risk of discovery still present, Gideon falls to his knees, puts his face to the ground, and worships. His fear is gone, replaced by a profound and grateful awe. He and Purah creep back out of the camp and climb the hill to their own small encampment. But the man who returns is not the same man who left. The hesitant farmer, the doubter who needed endless signs, is gone forever. In his place is Jerubbaal, the mighty warrior the angel had named. His eyes are burning with a new light. His voice, when he speaks, is filled with an authority and confidence that no one has heard from him before. He wakes his 300 men. Arise, he commands, his voice ringing with triumph. For the Lord has given the host of Midian into your hand. The faith he received in the valley is now contagious. The 300 men, who must have been harboring their own deep anxieties, are filled with their commander's newfound conviction. Then Gideon lays out his battle plan, and it is one of the strangest and most brilliant plans in the history of warfare. He is not going to rely on swords or spears. He is going to fight with fear. He is going to use the enemy's own terror as his primary weapon. He divides his tiny force into 3 companies of 100 men, and he gives each soldier his equipment, not a sword, not a shield. He gives each man a shofar, a ram's horn trumpet. He gives each man an empty clay pitcher, and he gives each man a torch. The plan is to hide the burning torches inside the pitchers. His instructions are simple. The 3 companies will surround the vast Midianite camp on 3 sides. They will wait for his signal. They are to do exactly as he does. The target time is the beginning of the middle watch, around 10 o'clock at night. This is a psychologically astute choice. The first watch of sentries, tired from their long shift, would be heading to their tents. The new watch, still shaking off sleep, would be moving to their posts. It is a moment of transition, of lax security, of maximum vulnerability. The 300 men move into position, their hearts pounding not with fear anymore, but with a wild, exhilarating faith. holding the most absurd weapons of war ever assembled, but they are confident in their commander and in their God. Gideon, at the head of his company, stands on the edge of the camp, waiting for the precise moment. Then he gives the signal. He raises his own trumpet to his lips and blows a piercing blast that shatters the night's silence. Simultaneously, he smashes his clay pitcher on the ground, revealing the blazing torch that was hidden inside. Across the perimeter of the camp, 300 trumpets blast in unison. 300 pitchers are shattered, the sound like an army breaking its way through a fortress. 300 torches flare up in the darkness, creating the terrifying illusion of a vast attacking force appearing out of nowhere. And then they shout, a single deafening war cry that echoes from the hills. A sword for the Lord and for Gideon. The effect on the sleeping Midianite camp is instantaneous and catastrophic. They are jolted from their sleep into a nightmare. They are surrounded by light and sound. The trumpet blasts, a tool used for signaling vast armies, make them believe they are being attacked by a force of tens of thousands. In the flickering, disorienting torchlight, they cannot see the true size of the attacking force. All they know is that they are surrounded, and the enemy is upon them. Panic, the very panic that Gideon's spies had detected in their hearts, erupts into a full-blown frenzy. The soldiers stumble out of their tents, grabbing their swords, completely disoriented. In the darkness and confusion, they cannot tell friend from foe. A Midianite sees a shadowy figure running with a sword and attacks. Not realizing it is his own countryman. The entire camp, 135,000 strong, dissolves into a chaotic, self-destructive civil war. Men scream and shout, cutting down their own comrades. The army implodes, destroying itself from within. Gideon's 300 men do not even have to fight. They simply stand their ground on the hillside, holding their torches high, blowing their trumpets, and watching the mighty host of Midian annihilate itself in a wave of terror. The victory is total, a complete rout, accomplished not with steel, but with sound, light, and a divinely inspired psychological strategy. The story of Gideon's midnight mission is so wonderfully gentle. It's a story for anyone who has ever felt afraid, for anyone who has felt too small or too weak for the task ahead. It reminds us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to take the next step, even when we are trembling. And it shows us a God who doesn't stand aloof, demanding a faith we don't have. Instead, he meets us in the dark, in our most vulnerable moments. And sometimes, if we're willing to go on a little spy mission of our own, he will let us overhear a whisper of his truth in the most unexpected of places. A whisper that is just enough to strengthen our hands and send us on our way. We take a great leap forward in time now, leaving behind the dusty, chaotic era of the judges, a time of tribal skirmishes and desperate, localized conflicts. We arrive in what should have been the golden age of Israel. The nation is no longer a loose and squabbling confederation of tribes. It is a kingdom, unified and powerful, its borders secure, its name respected and feared by its neighbors. At its heart is the new capital, the city of Jerusalem, captured from the Jebusites and transformed into a center of political and spiritual life. And on the throne sits the architect of it all, King David. But this is not the David of our Sunday school stories, the ruddy shepherd boy with his sling, or the dashing young warrior poet who charmed a nation. This is an older David, a man in the autumn of his reign. He is a king who has known dizzying success and devastating failure. He is a brilliant administrator, a gifted musician, a peerless military commander, and a man after God's own heart. But he is also a man haunted by the ghosts of his own choices. Years have passed since his terrible sin with Bathsheba and the calculated murder of her husband, Uriah. He has repented, and he has been forgiven by God. But forgiveness does not always erase consequences. The prophet Nathan had come to him with a verdict that was both a pardon and a curse. The Lord has put away your sin, you shall not die. Nevertheless, the sword shall never depart from your house. This prophecy hangs like a permanent, dark cloud over the otherwise sunlit splendor of his kingdom. It is the background radiation to our story, a promise of internal strife, of familial betrayal. And the embodiment of that prophecy, the beautiful, terrible instrument of its fulfillment, is David's own son, Absalom. If you were to design a prince in a fable, you would design Absalom. The scriptures tell us that from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. He was impossibly handsome. He had a magnificent mane of thick, heavy hair, so legendary that when he cut it once a year, it weighed 200 shekels by the king's weight, a symbol of his almost supernatural vitality and charisma. But beneath this stunningly beautiful exterior, a cold and patient poison had been gathering for years. His was a bitterness born of real and perceived injustices. His sister, Tamar, had been brutally assaulted by their half-brother Amnon, and David, though angry, had done nothing. The king, who was the ultimate source of justice in the land, failed to bring justice to his own daughter. So Absalom had waited. For 2 full years, he nursed his grudge in silence until he orchestrated the perfect revenge, murdering Amnon at a feast. This act forced him into exile for 3 years, and even after he was allowed to return to Jerusalem, David refused to see him for another 2 years. These were years of festering resentment, of a son feeling dishonored and unseen by his father. When they finally did reconcile, with a kiss from the king, it was too late. The love in Absalom's heart had been supplanted by a cold, calculating ambition. He wanted more than his father's affection. He wanted his father's throne. And so begins one of the most brilliant and insidious political campaigns in history. It is a masterclass in populism, a slow, methodical theft of a nation's heart. For 4 years, Absalom works his craft. He sets himself up as a man of the people, a prince of unparalleled glamour and accessibility. He acquires a chariot, a symbol of royalty and power, and hires 50 men to run before him, a human spectacle that announces his presence wherever he goes. His chosen place of operation is the city gate. In the ancient world, the gate was not just an entrance. It was the courthouse, the city hall, the public square. It was where business was transacted and legal disputes were settled. Every day, Absalom would rise early and station himself there. And when anyone came to the city with a lawsuit to bring before the king, Absalom would intercept them. Imagine the scene. A farmer from a distant village, having traveled for days to seek the king's justice, is awestruck to be greeted personally by the handsome, charismatic prince. Absalom would call him over, his voice a perfect blend of authority and compassion. "What city are you from?" he would ask. He would listen intently to the man's story, his brow furrowed with sympathy. And when the story was finished, he would sigh, a theatrical gesture of profound disappointment. "Look," Absalom would say, placing a consoling hand on the man's shoulder. "Your case is good and right, but there is no one deputed by the king to hear you." It was a devastatingly effective lie, a subtle poisoning of the well. He wasn't directly attacking the king. He was attacking the king's administration. He was creating the impression of a bureaucracy that was broken, of a king who was too old, too distant, too out of touch to care for the common man. And then he would deliver the masterstroke. He would lean in, his voice a confidential whisper. "Oh, if only I were judge in the land. Then every man with a dispute could come to me, and I would give him justice." When the man, overwhelmed by this personal attention, would bow down to him, Absalom would reach out, take his hand, and kiss him. He did this day after day for 4 years. And with every handshake, with every feigned sigh of sympathy, with every kiss, the scripture tells us, Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel when he senses that the time is right, that the people's loyalty has been sufficiently transferred from the aging father to the glamorous son. He makes his move. He goes to David with a pious request. "Please let me go and pay my vow, which I have vowed to the Lord in Hebron." It sounds so devout, but the choice of Hebron is laden with symbolic dynamite. Hebron was the ancient capital of Judah. It was the place where David himself had first been anointed king. Absalom is not going to pay a vow. He is going to his own coronation. David, oblivious, gives his blessing. "Go in peace." And Absalom goes to Hebron. With him is a contingent of 200 prominent men from Jerusalem, invited as guests to his feast, men who are completely unaware that they are about to be used as unwitting props in a treasonous coup. And once in Hebron, Absalom plays his trump card. He sends for the one man whose support will lend his rebellion an unshakable air of legitimacy: Ahithophel the Gilonite. Ahithophel was David's counselor. This simple title does not do him justice. In those days, the counsel that Ahithophel gave was as if one consulted the oracle of God. He was the wisest, most astute political and military mind in the entire kingdom. He was David's friend, his confidant, his strategist, and he betrays him. The reasons for his defection are not stated, but some scholars suggest he was the grandfather of Bathsheba, and he had never forgiven David for for the dishonor he had brought upon his family. Whatever the reason, his betrayal is a catastrophic blow. When the people hear that the great Ahithophel is with Absalom, the conspiracy gains immense strength. The rebellion, which had been a whispered plot, now becomes an open and seemingly unstoppable force. Back in Jerusalem, a messenger arrives at the palace, breathless and terrified. He falls before King David. The hearts of the men of Israel have gone after Absalom. A hush falls over the court. The air grows cold. This is not the report of a distant border skirmish. This is a dagger to the heart of the kingdom, wielded by the king's own son. David's reaction is not one of anger or defiance. It is one of profound sorrow and shocking speed. He is a brilliant general, and he assesses the strategic situation in an instant. The capital is not prepared for a siege. His son has the hearts of the people and the mind of Ahithophel. To stay and fight would mean a bloody civil war within the walls of the holy city, a battle he would likely lose. His only option is to retreat, to survive, to regroup. "Arise," he says to his servants and his loyal bodyguard, his voice heavy with grief, "and let us flee, or else there will be no escape for us from Absalom. Go quickly, lest he overtake us quickly and bring down ruin on us and strike the city with the edge of the sword." And so begins one of the most pathetic and poignant scenes in David's life. The great king, the conqueror of Goliath, the man who forged an empire, is forced to flee his own capital in shame. It is a procession of sorrows. He leads his household and his followers out of the palace, through the streets of Jerusalem, and out the eastern gate. They cross the Kidron Valley, the small brook at the foot of the city. Then they begin the ascent of the Mount of Olives. The scripture paints a heartbreaking picture. David is walking barefoot, a sign of humility and mourning. His head is covered, and he is weeping as he goes. This is not a strategic retreat. It is a funeral march. He is not just mourning the loss of his kingdom. He is mourning the loss of his son. All the people with him cover their heads and weep as they walk. The sound of their lamentation echoes from the hillsides. But in this dark hour of betrayal, there are stunning moments of loyalty that shine like stars in the night. As the sad procession makes its way out of the city, David is met by Ittai the Gittite. Ittai was a Philistine from Gath, the hometown of Goliath, a mercenary who had only recently entered David's service with his band of 600 warriors. He was a foreigner, with no ancestral ties to David or to Israel. David, in an act of great integrity, tries to release him from his service. "Why do you also go with us?" David asks him. "Go back and stay with the new king, for you are a foreigner and an exile from your home. You came only yesterday, and shall I today make you wander about with us, since I go I know not where?" It is a generous offer, but Ittai's response is one of the most beautiful oaths of loyalty in all of literature. "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives," the Philistine warrior declares, "wherever my lord the king shall be, whether for death or for life, there also will your servant be." He chooses the uncertain perilous future of the exiled king over the security of the new regime. His loyalty is not to the throne, but to the man on the throne. Deeply moved, David accepts his allegiance. A little further on, they are met by Zadok and Abiathar, the chief priests, and all the Levites with them, carrying the Ark of the Covenant. Their intention is to bring this most sacred object, the symbol of God's presence and power, with David into exile. It is a gesture of immense support, but David stops them. His response reveals a man whose faith has been refined by suffering into a state of profound and humble submission. "Carry the Ark of God back into the city," he commands. "If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and let me see both it and his dwelling place. But if he says, 'I have no pleasure in you, behold, here I am,' let him do to me what seems good to him." David has learned the hard way that God's presence cannot be contained in a box. His fate is in God's hands, not in the possession of a religious artifact. He is entrusting himself completely to the divine will, and it is in this moment of surrender that a new strategy, a daring plan of counter-espionage, begins to form in his mind. He looks at the two priests and sees not just spiritual leaders, but a potential intelligence asset. "Are you not a seer, Zadok?" he asks. "Go back to the city in peace, and your two sons with you, Ahimaaz your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait at the fords of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me." He is establishing a spy network. Zadok and Abiathar will be his eyes and ears inside occupied Jerusalem. Their sons, swift young men, will be the couriers, the runners who will bring him vital intelligence. It is a risky plan, but it is his only hope. The priests turn back toward the city. David continues his sorrowful climb up the Mount of Olives. At the very summit, a place where people used to worship God, he is met by a figure, his clothes torn, dust on his head in a sign of mourning. It is his old and trusted friend, Hushai the Archite, another of his wise counselors. Hushai is ready to follow his king into the wilderness, but David looks at his loyal friend, and in a flash of strategic brilliance, he sees a far more valuable and far more dangerous purpose for him. If Hushai comes with him, he will just be another mouth to feed, another burden. But if he were to stay in Jerusalem, "If you go on with me," David says, his mind racing, "you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant in time past, so now I will be your servant,' then you shall defeat for me the counsel of Ahithophel." It is an audacious, breathtaking request. He is asking his friend to become a double agent. He is asking him to feign treason, to offer his service to the usurper, to ingratiate himself with the man who is trying to kill him. His mission objective is precise and perilous. Get into Absalom's inner circle and sabotage the brilliant advice of Ahithophel. He is to fight a war not with swords, but with words, in the very heart of the enemy's command structure. He is to be David's mole, his plant, his agent of counterintelligence, and David links this new mission directly to the spy network he has just established. "Are not Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there?" he says. "Whatever you hear from the king's house, you shall tell to Zadok and Abiathar, and their 2 sons are with them. So by them you shall send to me everything you hear." The entire plan comes together in this moment. Hushai will be the source. The priests will be the handlers. Their sons will be the couriers. The danger for Hushai is almost unimaginable. He is a well-known friend of David. His defection will be met with suspicion. One wrong word, one slip of the tongue, and he will be exposed and executed in the most gruesome manner. But this loyal friend does not hesitate. He agrees. He turns back from the summit, leaving his grieving king, and begins the lonely, terrifying walk back down into the city that is now in the hands of the enemy. Hushai enters Jerusalem just as Absalom is making his triumphal entry. He presents himself before the new king and makes a great show of allegiance. "Long live the king," he cries out. "Long live the king." Absalom, surrounded by his followers, is suspicious. He knows Hushai's reputation. "Is this your loyalty to your friend?" he asks, his voice laced with cynical disbelief. "Why did you not go with your friend David?" Hushai's reply is a masterpiece of doublespeak, a carefully crafted response that is both a lie and, in a deeper sense, the truth. "No," he says, "for whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel have chosen, his I will be, and with him I will remain." He is cleverly playing on Absalom's belief that his popular uprising is the will of God and the people. He is, in a way, pledging allegiance to the principle of God's chosen king, a title he secretly still reserves for David. He wins Absalom over, and the double agent is in. The first test of the new regime comes quickly. Absalom, now in the palace, asks the great Ahithophel for advice on how to consolidate his power. Ahithophel's counsel is swift, brutal, and politically brilliant. He tells Absalom to take the 10 concubines David had left behind to keep the palace, and to publicly sleep with them in a tent erected on the palace roof, in the sight of all Israel. This was not an act of mere lust. It was a calculated political statement of immense power in the ancient Near East. It was a public and irreversible declaration that Absalom had not only seized the throne, but had utterly humiliated his predecessor and taken possession of his house. It was a way of burning his bridges, of showing all of Israel that there was no possibility of reconciliation with his father. From this point forward, everyone would have to choose a side. It was horrifying counsel, but it was effective. Absalom takes it, and the deed is done. Ahithophel's status as the chief strategist of the rebellion is cemented. Now comes the crucial moment, the military strategy session. Ahithophel speaks again. "Please, let me choose 12,000 men," he says to Absalom, "and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak-handed, and I will throw him into a panic, and all the people who are with him will flee. I will strike down only the king, and I will bring all the people back to you. It is a perfect plan, a lightning strike. a surgical decapitation of the opposition. David and his followers are exhausted, demoralized, and disorganized. A swift, overwhelming night attack would certainly succeed. By killing only David, Ahithophel's plan would also minimize the bloodshed of a full-scale civil war, making it easier for Absalom to unite the kingdom behind him afterward. The plan is logical, efficient, and ruthless, and Absalom and all the elders of Israel agree. The counsel seemed good to them. In this moment, David's cause is hanging by a thread. The trap is about to be sprung. But then Absalom, perhaps with a flicker of unease, or perhaps out of a desire to hear his new counselor's opinion, says, "Call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he has to say." Hushai is summoned. The fate of the kingdom now rests on his shoulders. He is told of Ahithophel's plan. He knows he cannot just say it's a bad idea. That would be too obvious. He has to offer an alternative that is more seductive, more appealing to the vanity and arrogance of the young usurper. He begins his speech with a bold stroke. The counsel that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time. He has the attention of the room. He then proceeds to weave a magnificent tapestry of flattery, psychology, and strategic misdirection. He starts by reminding them of the man they are dealing with. "You know your father and his men," Hushai says, his voice filled with a feigned awe. "They are mighty warriors, and they are enraged, like a bear in the field robbed of her cubs." He paints a terrifying picture of David, not as a weary old man, but as a cornered, ferocious animal, the most dangerous warrior in the world. "Besides," he adds, "your father is an expert in war. He will not spend the night with the people. Behold, even now he is hiding in one of the pits, or in some other place. He is playing on their fears." He suggests that a night attack might not even find David. And if Ahithophel's small force were to suffer even a minor initial setback, the news would spread like wildfire. The word will go out. There has been a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom. Then even the valiant man, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will utterly melt with fear. He is turning Ahithophel's swift strategy into a high-risk gamble that could shatter the morale of their entire movement. Having sown the seeds of doubt, he then presents his own plan. And his plan is not designed for military efficiency. It is designed to appeal directly to Absalom's ego. "But my counsel is this," he says, his voice rising with theatrical fervor. "Let all Israel be gathered to you, from Dan to Beersheba, from the northern border to the southern, a multitude like the sand that is by the sea. And you, O king, go to battle in person at their head." He is offering Absalom a vision of unparalleled glory. Not a sneaky night raid led by a subordinate, but a grand, majestic campaign with Absalom himself at the head of a massive, invincible army. He would not be a mere usurper. He would be the glorious king of all Israel, leading his adoring people into battle. "And we shall come upon him in whatever place he is found," Hushai continues, "and we shall light upon him as the dew falls on the ground. And of him and all the men with him not one will be left." It is a vision of total overwhelming annihilation. It is slow, clumsy, and gives David exactly what he needs most: time to regroup. Militarily, it is a terrible plan, but as a piece of political theater, it is irresistible. The choice is before Absalom. On the one hand, Ahithophel's cold, efficient, and brilliant strategy. On the other, Hushai's grand, glorious, and ego-stroking vision. Absalom, the vain and charismatic prince, is completely seduced. The counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel, he declares, and the elders agree. In a single, masterful speech, Hushai has accomplished his mission. He has defeated the counsel of Ahithophel. The narrator of the story gives us the divine perspective on this moment. For the Lord had ordained to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, so that the Lord might bring harm upon Absalom. Hushai's loyalty, his courage, his quick-wittedness created the human channel through which God's sovereign will could operate. Hushai knows he has only bought David a little time. He immediately goes to the priests, Zadok and Abiathar, and tells them everything. Thus and so did Ahithophel counsel Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus and so have I counseled. Now therefore send quickly and tell David, do not lodge tonight at the fords of the wilderness, but by all means pass over, lest the king and all the people who are with him be swallowed up. The intelligence must get through. The priests pass the message to a trusted servant girl. She goes to the rendezvous point just outside the city, a well called En-Rogel, where Jonathan and Ahimaaz are anxiously waiting. She delivers the urgent message. The two young men immediately set off to find David, but they are spotted. A young boy sees them and reports them to Absalom. The alarm is raised. Absalom's men are sent in pursuit. A desperate chase ensues. Jonathan and Ahimaaz are running for their lives and for the life of the king. They come to a village called Bahurim and run to a certain house. There, a woman, another of the Bible's brave, unnamed heroines, acts quickly to save them. She takes them into her courtyard and hides them down a dry well. She then takes a covering, spreads it over the mouth of the well, and scatters ground grain on it, making it look like a thrashing floor. When Absalom's men arrive, they ask her, "Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" The woman plays dumb. "Oh, they passed by here a little while ago and went over the brook," she says, sending them on a wild goose chase. After searching and finding nothing, the pursuers give up and return to Jerusalem. Once the coast is clear, the woman helps the two young men out of the well. They continue their journey, finally finding David and his camp. They deliver the message they have risked their lives to carry. The content of both counsels and Hushai's urgent warning to cross the Jordan River immediately. David acts on the intelligence without hesitation. Throughout the night, he organizes the crossing. By the time the sun rises, his entire following, men, women, and children, are safely on the other side of the Jordan. Hushai's mission has been a complete success. He has not only thwarted the enemy's best plan, but has also provided the crucial intelligence needed for the king to escape the trap. Back in Jerusalem, Ahithophel sees what has happened. He sees that Absalom has chosen Hushai's foolish, grandiose plan over his own perfect one. As a man of supreme strategic intellect, he understands instantly that the rebellion is now doomed. He can play out the entire war in his mind and see the inevitable conclusion. David has been given time. He will gather his forces. Absalom's unwieldy army will be no match for David's experienced veterans. The cause is lost. And for a man like Ahithophel, a man whose entire identity is wrapped up in his peerless wisdom, to have his counsel rejected in favor of such obvious folly is a humiliation he cannot bear. He also knows that when David retakes the throne, his fate as the chief traitor is sealed. His end is as cold and calculating as his life. He doesn't fly into a rage or attempt to flee. He calmly saddles his donkey, rides to his ancestral home, and methodically puts his household in order. He settles his affairs, gives his final instructions, and then he goes into a room by himself and hangs himself. It is the quiet, chilling end of a man whose great wisdom lacked the one ingredient necessary for a life of purpose: loyalty. The story of David's flight and Hushai's mission is a thrilling tale of espionage and counter-intrigue. But at its heart, it is a story of friendship. It's a story about the incredible courage of a man who was willing to walk into the lion's den for his friend and his king. Hushai's battlefield was not a valley filled with clashing swords, but a council chamber filled with dangerous words. His victory was not won with a weapon of bronze or iron, but with a weapon of wit, loyalty, and a deep understanding of human nature. And his quiet, perilous heroism, hidden behind a mask of treason, created the space for a kingdom to be saved, and for a father's ultimate, tragic story to reach its conclusion. Our final journey tonight takes us back in time, away from the gilded, unified kingdom of David, and back into the murky, chaotic period of the Judges. It is a time we have visited before with Gideon, but we are now in a different part of the country, and the story has a much darker, more ambiguous feel. It is a story that unfolds under the constant, unsettling refrain of this era. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes, and this final spy mission, more than any other, serves as a grim and unsettling illustration of what that spiritual and political anarchy looked like on the ground. Our focus is the tribe of Dan. In the grand lottery of the conquest, when Joshua divided the promised land among the 12 tribes, Dan was allotted a beautiful and fertile territory on the coastal plain. The problem was, this land was already occupied by some of the most formidable people in the region, including the Philistines. The Danites, for whatever reason, a lack of faith, a lack of military strength, or a combination of both, failed to drive out the inhabitants. In fact, the opposite happened. The book of Judges tells us starkly that the Amorites forced the people of Dan into the hill country, for they did not allow them to come down to the plain. So the tribe of Dan is in a state of crisis. They are a people hemmed in, a tribe without a home, crammed into a mountainous territory that is too small to support their population. are refugees in the promised land, a people whose inheritance has slipped through their fingers. Their story is one of desperation. And desperation, as we shall see, can be a dangerous and morally corrosive force. But before we meet the spies that the Danites will send on their desperate quest, the narrator of this ancient story takes us on a strange and revealing detour. It's as if to understand the journey of the spies, we must first understand the spiritual landscape through which they will travel. We are taken to the hill country of Ephraim, to the home of a man named Micah. Micah's story begins with a family drama that is both strange and sadly illuminating. He had, at some point, stolen 1,100 shekels of silver from his own mother. It was a huge sum of money. His mother, discovering the theft but not knowing the thief, had pronounced a curse upon the person who took it. Micah, hearing this curse, gets scared and confesses, "Behold, the silver is with me, I took it." Now, in a normal, functioning society, this confession would be met with punishment, or at least a stern rebuke. But these are not normal times. Micah's mother, instead of being angry, is overjoyed to have her money back and to be able to lift the curse from her son. Her reaction is a perfect snapshot of the religious confusion of the age. "Blessed be my son by the Lord," she says, and then she declares her intention for the recovered money. "I wholly dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son, to make a graven image and a molten image." Let's pause and consider the breathtaking wrongness of that statement. She is dedicating money to the Lord, Yahweh, the God of Israel, in order to create an idol, the very thing the second commandment explicitly forbids. She is trying to worship the right God using the completely wrong pagan methods. It is a classic case of syncretism, a blending of true faith with the idolatrous practices of the Canaanites around them. She thinks she is being pious, but she is committing a profound act of apostasy. And so, a portion of the silver is given to a silversmith, who fashions it into an idol. And Micah, her son, now has the centerpiece for his own private religious setup. He creates what amounts to a personal shrine in his house. He has the graven image, the molten image, and he also makes an ephod, a sacred garment normally worn only by the high priest and teraphim, which were a kind of household god or idol, perhaps used for divination. He has assembled a full kit of religious paraphernalia, a DIY religion customized to his own tastes. The only thing he's missing is a priest. At first, he solves this by simply consecrating one of his own sons to fill the role, another act that was strictly forbidden by the law of Moses, which reserved the priesthood for the tribe of Levi. Micah has built a religion of convenience, a faith that looks and feels spiritual, but is entirely of his own making, a hollow shell devoid of true obedience to God. His home is a microcosm of the spiritual state of the nation. Into this strange household wanders another character, a young man who is a Levite from the town of Bethlehem in Judah. The Levites were the priestly tribe, set apart by God to be the teachers of the law and the ministers of the tabernacle. They were not given a tribal territory of their own, but were meant to live in scattered cities throughout Israel, supported by the tithes of the other tribes. But in this chaotic era, with the central sanctuary often neglected, many Levites like this young man were left to fend for themselves. He was, essentially, an unemployed cleric, wandering the country looking for a position. Micah sees him, and an idea sparks in his mind. Here is a chance to upgrade his religious establishment, to give his counterfeit shrine a veneer of legitimacy. He makes the young Levite a job offer. "Stay with me," he says, "and be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver a year, a suit of clothes, and your food." The Levite is delighted. It's a steady job with room and board. He agrees immediately. And Micah is absolutely thrilled with his new acquisition. He believes he has hit the spiritual jackpot. "Now I know that the Lord will prosper me," he says to himself, "because I have a Levite as priest." The tragic irony is profound. He thinks he has secured God's blessing by hearing a genuine Levite. But all he has done is corrupt a member of the holy tribe and compound his own sin by making this Levite the priest of a pagan idol. This is the morally and spiritually confused world that is about to collide with the desperation of the tribe of Dan. Back in the cramped hill country, the leaders of the Danites decide they can wait no longer. They must find a new home. They select 5 men described as men of valor from their clans in the towns of Zorah and Eshtal. Their mission is simple and sweeping. Go, spy out the land and search it. They are not looking for a specific, promised territory. They are on a quest for a vulnerability, for a piece of land that is desirable, and most importantly, conquerable. These are not men like Joshua and Caleb, whose mission was rooted in claiming a divine promise. These are pragmatic, hard-bitten men, charged with ensuring the survival of their tribe by any means necessary. The 5 spies set out on their journey, traveling north. Their path takes them through the hill country of Ephraim, and by chance, or by a darker kind of providence, they find themselves near the isolated estate of the man Micah. As they approach, they hear a voice, and there is something about the voice, its accent and intonation, that is familiar and out of place. It is the voice of the young Levite from Bethlehem. They recognize his southern Judahite accent, and it piques their curiosity. What is a man from the south doing way up here, serving as a priest in what appears to be a private, roadside shrine? They turn aside and confront him. Their questioning is not gentle. It is the sharp, direct interrogation of suspicious men. "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What is your business here?" The young Levite, perhaps a bit intimidated by these 5 warriors, tells them his story. He explains how Micah hired him, gave him a salary and a place to live, and made him his personal priest. The 5 Danite spies look at each other. They do not see the religious absurdity and corruption of the situation. They see something else entirely. They see an opportunity. In their desperate, superstitious minds, they have stumbled upon a man of God, a professional priest with all the right equipment, an ephod, idols who can give them a divine sign, an oracle for their journey. Their desperation has made them spiritually undiscerning. They are looking for a good omen, and they are willing to find it anywhere. Please inquire of God for us, they ask the Levite, that we may know whether our journey will be successful. The Levite, likely eager to impress these important-looking men and to prove his own value, doesn't seem to actually inquire of God at all. He doesn't perform a ritual or seek a vision. He simply gives them the answer he knows they want to hear. He provides a quick, convenient, and comforting prophecy. "Go in peace," he says with an air of priestly authority. "The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord." It is exactly what the spies wanted. They now believe their mission has a divine stamp of approval. This sham blessing from a corrupt priest at an idolatrous shrine gives them a surge of confidence. They are no longer just searching. They are on a divinely sanctioned quest. They thank the Levite and continue on their journey north, their spirits high. They travel much further north than any Israelite territory, to the lush, well-watered region near the sources of the Jordan River. And there they find it, a city called Laish. As they observe the city from a distance, it appears to be a veritable paradise. The narrator describes it as a place of idyllic peace and security. The land around it is fertile, with no lack of anything that is in the earth. The people are living securely in the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting. But the spies are not looking for a travel destination. They are assessing a military target. And as they analyze the situation, they see not a peaceful community, but a perfect victim. They identify a series of fatal weaknesses. Firstly, the people of Laish are living in the manner of the Sidonians, meaning they are likely peaceful merchants and farmers, not a militaristic society. Secondly, they are quiet and unsuspecting, living in a state of blissful complacency, their guard down, not expecting an attack. And thirdly, and most critically, they are isolated. They were far from the Sidonians, their powerful trading partners on the coast, and had no dealings with anyone else. They have no allies. If they are attacked, no one will come to their aid. The spies look at this peaceful, prosperous, isolated, and complacent city, and they see the answer to their tribe's prayers. It is a rich prize, ripe for the picking. It is an easy conquest. Their mission is a success. The 5 men journey all the way back to their people in Zorah and Eshtal. They stand before the tribal assembly, and they deliver their report. It is a powerful and persuasive speech, designed to stir a desperate people to action. "Arise and let us go up against them," they declare. "For we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And will you do nothing? Do not be slow to go, to enter in and possess the land." They describe the fertility of the soil, the wealth of the city. They describe the vulnerability of the people. And then they play their trump card, the piece of information that will galvanize the tribe. They tell of their encounter with the priest and the divine word he gave them. "God has given it into your hands," they proclaim with absolute certainty. It is a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth. The report has its intended effect. The weary and landless Danites are filled with a new hope. An expeditionary force is assembled. 600 men are chosen and armed for war. But this is not just a military raid. This is a migration. They gather their families, their children, their livestock, and their possessions. They are not just going to conquer a city. They are going to abandon their old homes and move their entire tribe to a new one. This armed column of 600 warriors, surrounded by a caravan of civilians and animals, begins its long march north. Their route, inevitably, takes them back through the hill country of Ephraim, right past the isolated estate of Micah. And the 5 men who had been there before now see another opportunity, one that is even darker than their first. They know that Micah's house contains a fully functional religious shrine, and they decide that a new Danite settlement needs a religion to go with it. They pull aside the commanders of the force. Do you know, they say conspiratorially, that in these houses there are an ephod, teraphim, a graven image, and a molten image. Now, therefore, consider what you should do. The suggestion is clear. Why leave such valuable religious assets behind? The plan that unfolds is a brazen act of armed robbery. The main force of 600 warriors halts at the gate of Micah's property, a menacing and intimidating presence. The 5 spies then go into the house. They walk right past the young Levite priest and into the shrine, and they begin to take everything: the silver idol, the ephod, the household gods. The priest, seeing his entire livelihood being carried away, comes out and confronts them. "What are you doing?" he asks, his voice a mixture of confusion and fear. The Danites' response is chilling. It is a raw display of power, a threat combined with a tempting job offer. "Keep quiet," one of them says, gesturing for him to put his hand over his own mouth. "And come with us, and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be priest to the house of one man, or to be priest to a tribe and a clan in Israel?" They are offering him a promotion, a major one. He can remain the private chaplain to a single, now impoverished man, or he can become the high priest of an entire tribe. For the young Levite, a man with no apparent moral compass or loyalty to his employer, the choice is easy. The scripture tells us his heart was glad. He eagerly takes the stolen religious objects from the spies, places himself in the midst of the Danite caravan, and joins them on their march. He is a willing accomplice in the theft of his own shrine. Just then, Micah, having discovered the robbery, gathers a posse of his neighbors and gives chase. He catches up with the slow-moving caravan and shouts at them. The Danites turn to face him. "What is the matter with you, that you have come with such a company?" they ask with a feigned innocence. Micah's reply is almost comically pathetic. It is the cry of a man who has lost his custom-made God. "You have taken my gods, which I made, and the priest, and you have gone away, and what have I left?" His entire religious system, the thing he believed would bring him prosperity, has been stolen from him, leaving him with absolutely nothing. The Danites do not offer sympathy. They offer a brutal, thuggish threat. "Let not your voice be heard among us," their leader says, "lest angry men fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household. The message is clear: be quiet and go home, or we will kill you and your entire family." Micah looks at the 600 armed warriors. He looks at his small band of neighbors. He knows he is hopelessly outmatched. He turns, defeated and broken, and walks home. His hollow religion had provided no comfort, no protection, and no blessing. It had only brought him loss. The Danite migration continues north, their column now complete with a stolen religion and a co-opted priest. They finally arrive at the peaceful valley where the city of Laish sits, basking in its quiet and unsuspecting security. The attack is a brutal, merciless slaughter. The people of Laish, completely unprepared for an assault, are cut down by the swords of the Danite warriors. The city is put to the torch and burned to the ground. On the ashes of this peaceful civilization, the Danites build their new home. They name the city Dan after their tribal ancestor. It becomes the northernmost settlement of Israel, the anchor of the famous biblical phrase describing the full extent of the land, from Dan to Beersheba. And there, in their new city, they set up the graven image they had stolen from Micah. They establish a new religious center, a new priesthood, and the narrator, in a final, devastating twist, reveals the identity of their new priest. The opportunistic young Levite was Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Moses. It is a shocking revelation. The priest who presided over this new idolatrous shrine, founded on theft and violence, was the grandson of Moses himself, the grandson of the man who received the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, the man who led Israel out of slavery, is now earning a living as a priest of a stolen idol. There could be no more powerful or tragic symbol of the spiritual decay and moral chaos that had gripped Israel. And so our last spy mission comes to its sad conclusion. It is a mission that succeeded, but one that feels like a profound failure. The Danites got what they wanted. Their spies found them a home, but it was a home acquired through brutal violence against a peaceful people, and a spiritual identity founded on brazen theft and blatant idolatry. It is a story that sits uncomfortably with us, as it should. It is a cautionary tale, a quiet and unsettling story for a late night. It shows us what can happen when desperation drives out decency, when people decide to do what is right in their own eyes, and when a mission to find a home ends in the losing of one's soul. It is a somber reminder that not all quests are noble, and not all successes are victories.